I never thought a simple word like pregnant could feel like a punch I didn't see coming. My name is Ryan, and for the past 5 years, I thought my marriage with Emily was a partnership built on trust, love, and mutual respect. We had a small, cozy home in Denver, a life that wasn't extravagant but felt secure. Our routines, though simple, had a rhythm I appreciated. I like to think that in a world where people are constantly moving, Emily and I were each other's constants. The first signs of trouble didn't arrive with a fight or a big argument. They came in the quiet moments, the subtle withdrawals, and the evenings where her attention seemed to slip further away. Emily had always been affectionate, warm, and loving, but somewhere along the way, the physical closeness that once marked our relationship slowly faded. First, I chalked it up to stress. She had a demanding job as a pediatric nurse, often working long shifts that left her exhausted. I told myself that once things settled, we would find our way back to each other. But weeks turned into months and months into a year. I found myself sleeping on the edge of the bed while she curled up in the middle, her body distant, her touch almost non-existent. Hugs became fleeting, kisses mechanical. I tried to bring it up once or twice, gently, without accusation. "Emily," I said one evening, "I feel like we're drifting. Is everything okay?" She would sigh, avoid eye contact, and say, "I'm tired, Ryan. That's all. I just need some space." I didn't press. I thought perhaps patience would bring her back to me. Maybe she just needed time. During that year, I began noticing little changes in the way she acted. Not signs of another man, not yet, but subtle shifts. She guarded her phone more, canceled dinners with friends, and sometimes looked at me with a cool detachment that I had never seen before. The worst part was the uncertainty. My mind began to wander through all the what-ifs and maybes. But I told myself trust. Trust had always been our foundation. I refused to let suspicion take over my life. Then came the day that shattered every expectation I had built over those 12 long months. Emily sat me down in the living room after dinner, her eyes fixed somewhere past me, her hands fidgeting in her lap. I braced myself for another excuse, another sigh, another withdrawal. But the words that came out of her mouth were unlike anything I had prepared for. She said, "Ryan, I'm pregnant." I stared at her for a moment, unable to respond. My mind raced through the implications, the emotions, and the sudden weight of the news. There was joy, of course, but it was tangled with anger, confusion, and a year of denial that I couldn't shake off so easily. I wanted to ask so many things. Why didn't she tell me sooner? Why had she denied me, shut me out, and then carried this secret for an entire year? But before I could find the words, Emily continued. She wasn't defensive and she wasn't apologetic. She just looked at me, a mixture of hope and hesitation in her eyes, as if the pregnancy itself was supposed to bridge the gap she had allowed to grow between us. And at that moment I realized that nothing about this was going to be simple. The next few days felt surreal. I kept replaying her words in my mind, the way Emily said, "I'm pregnant," almost casually, as if it erased the last 12 months of rejection. But it didn't. I couldn't ignore the gap that had formed between us, the nights I had spent on the edge of the bed, the conversations that ended in her sighs and avoidance. It wasn't just about the pregnancy. It was about the trust that had been quietly chipped away, day by day, until the foundation of our marriage felt unstable. I started observing her more closely, not out of suspicion at first, but because I needed to understand the distance she had created. Every movement, every word, even the way she laughed at things she used to find funny, it all seemed different. I wondered if I had missed something along the way, a sign or a warning that would have explained her withdrawal. But deep down I already knew intimacy is not just physical. It is the unspoken language of attention, care, and presence. For a year, she had been silent in all three. I tried to approach her gently. One evening I said, "Emily, I want to understand, what happened? Why did you shut me out?" She looked down, twisting the hem of her sweater, and whispered, "I don't know. I needed space. I didn't mean to hurt you." I felt a wave of frustration mixed with pity. Her words were sincere, yet they didn't undo the months of neglect, the nights I had spent wondering if she still cared, the feeling of being invisible in my own home. Then came the subtle shifts, the signs that she wanted things to return to normal, or at least as normal as they could be now. She began cooking again, leaving little notes, occasionally sitting close on the couch. But the closeness felt tentative, like she was testing the waters. I kept my distance, carefully measuring my own reactions. I knew from experience that rushing back into comfort could make things worse. Trust isn't rebuilt in a single night. It's painstaking, fragile, and must be earned step by step. And that's when I noticed Alex, Emily's coworker and friend, someone she had mentioned casually before but never in detail. Nothing overt, nothing alarming, but small interactions I caught when she thought I wasn't looking. She laughed a little too freely, touched her arm briefly, shared inside jokes I didn't understand. I didn't confront, I didn't accuse, I simply noted. The patterns, the timing, the little signs that had escaped me in the previous year. My instincts, honed from years of observation, told me to pay attention, to watch, and not to jump to conclusions without evidence. The pregnancy complicated everything. I wanted to feel happiness, the excitement that comes with expecting a child. But I couldn't ignore the year of denial, the emotional absence, the silence that had been deafening. And so, I chose patience. I let the pregnancy unfold naturally, but I also began preparing myself mentally for the conversations we were going to have, the questions I had to ask, and the truths I might uncover. Emily didn't know it yet, but the next few weeks were going to reveal far more than a simple pregnancy. They were going to expose the cracks in our marriage that had been hidden under smiles, routines, and unspoken words. A few weeks later, the tension in the house was palpable, even if no one said it aloud. Emily moved with a kind of cautious optimism, as if the pregnancy had softened her resolve but also left her unsure of her next step. I stayed calm, neutral, observing without judgment, letting her actions speak louder than any words she could offer. It was a delicate balance. I wanted to protect what was left of our connection, but I also needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. One evening, while Emily was preparing dinner, I found myself standing at the doorway, watching her move around the kitchen. There was a softness in her movements now, a hint of vulnerability, but I couldn't forget the year of neglect. I asked gently, "Emily, who have you been spending time with at work? Is there someone?" Her eyes flicked to mine, a moment of hesitation, then a quick shake of her head. "No one, Ryan. Just friends," she replied too quickly, almost rehearsed. My instincts prickled. Something didn't feel right. I decided not to press. Not yet. Later that week, the truth revealed itself in a way I hadn't anticipated. Alex, the friendly coworker, came by our house under the pretense of helping Emily with a work project. Emily invited him in, laughing more freely than she had in months. I stayed in the living room pretending to read a book, but listening carefully. Their conversation was casual, but the subtle touches, the laughter that lingered a beat too long, it all confirmed the suspicions I had tried to push aside. My heart sank, not with rage but with clarity. The year of denial, the emotional distance, it wasn't random. And now it was undeniable. I waited until Alex left before confronting Emily. She sat on the couch, nervous, aware of the unspoken tension. I leaned forward and said calmly, "Emily, I've seen enough. I need honesty. Was there anything between you and Alex?" She swallowed, looking down, her hands trembling slightly. "Ryan, I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely. I felt invisible," she admitted, voice breaking. I stayed silent, letting her words settle. This wasn't just about Alex. It was about the pattern of withdrawal, denial, and secrets that had defined the past year. The conversation that followed was long, difficult, and painful. Emily apologized, tried to explain, tried to justify, but the year of neglect couldn't be undone. I listened, weighed my emotions carefully, and decided that actions would speak louder than words. Trust, once broken, isn't rebuilt with promises. It is rebuilt with consistency, honesty, and accountability. We had a child on the way, a life we had created together, but I knew that our future depended not on my forgiveness alone, but on her willingness to change and take responsibility. In the end, I chose clarity over comfort. I established boundaries, insisted on transparency, and made it clear that emotional neglect would no longer be tolerated. The pregnancy was a new chapter, yes, but it would not erase the past. Emily and I had work to do, individually and together, and as I watched her rest that evening, I felt a strange mixture of hope and caution. Hope that we could rebuild, and caution that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. It was a difficult lesson, one I had learned the hard way. Intimacy is not a right. It is a privilege earned every day. Trust is not given, it is nurtured, protected, and respected. And love, real love, is tested not in moments of comfort, but in moments of absence, denial, and truth.